Hi there, this is Just a Girl in Camas, Alicia King, and I am really excited today to introduce you to someone very special to me. This isn't just someone out in the community, although this is someone in our community. This is my grandpa, and his name is Richard Schwary, and if you haven't met him out and about or heard his name around town, you should, because he is a gentleman that has lived in Camas, Washington for 86 years. You're 86 young, Grandpa, right?
That's right.
All right. So I wanted to sit down for a few minutes with my grandpa today and share with you some of his stories about living in Camas, watching this little town grow, how he's seen the community change, and I just like you to get to know this great guy that lives here. So Grandpa, thank you for your time today chatting with me.
Hey, it's been fun. Allie, we'll have to do this more often. Maybe I can remember something.
You've done great. Before we even sat down for the interview, I've been here chatting with him about his life, and I've learned quite a bit of neat things. So thanks for sharing with me.
Thank you. Very welcome.
So, Grandpa, if you can, give us a little bit of a visual. I'm sure you don't remember quite 86 years back, but of your first memories of this town of Camas, if you can kind of describe to us what it was like, just give us a little visual about how you remember the town.
Well, my first recollection, and that's been a way back, has been when Main Street was not paved.
Yeah, it was dirt.
There was dirt, and of course cars. There were a few wagons, not too many. Most of them were cars, but and going up and down the street was not a clean deal because the street was a little bit. Sometimes of the year would be kind of dusty, and they'd have to get the one of their departments on street departments. They pick up liquor, which is a process of the paper makers, stinky stuff, black, but they would take and put that in a tanker and spray it on the street going down, and instead of that kind of locked in the dust. It wasn't paving it, but it was locked it in so that you weren't getting a whole lot of dust up.
One thing that's neat about my grandpa and actually about my family history here in Camas is that my great-grandpa, your dad, started a business here in Camas, and actually, the first business was down on 4th, right? And he had a grocery store down there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was a store that he'd started with a couple other people. In those days, it was sort of hard if you didn't have the money to invest in a meat department with all the equipment and all of that. So those meat and produce were leased out departments that he had the space, but they would bring the equipment in and so forth. And then the produce department, and they needed more space, so they took a store across the street and made just a produce store out of it. And so they expanded the grocery department and meat department to be able to accommodate the growth in the business and the space that you needed to have.
So do you remember working down in that store? Would you go down there and work after school?
Oh, yeah. I remember going down. In those days, there weren't too many packaged things. So things like rice, beans, any of those dried products like that, prunes, which weren't kind of a gooey thing to have to mess with packaging.
I'm sure.
And he'd buy them in these 100-pound sacks or whatever. They just
would he buy them locally? Because prunes were something.
Yeah, they were pretty local, but
Prune
I think
Hill
but they had to be taken to a dryer processor, and they as times went on, there became fewer and fewer of those. So you had to go maybe sometimes a little out of town to be able to get prunes and eggs too, or something that you didn't buy just by the dozen. You went out to the farm and you pick up a couple dozen at a time, and they were just hatched, So the business was kind of scattered.
It was fresh.
Yeah, and it was very fresh. but this is little town stuff, I suppose. In Portland, it was a different proposition, of course.
I love it. So to finish, well, not to completely finish the business side of my family here or how they were in the community, but from the grocery store, my great-grandpa, who was Mickey Schwary, he started what was called the One Stop, and you can actually find that today kind of where the line from Camas ends and Washougal starts, right?
Right.
And before we end the interview, tell me a little bit about the One Stop, how that used to be. How did that start?
Well, it was just Dad built a V, a group of stores, 2 wings to it, and they were almost a 90-degree, a little wider than that kind of a thing, and the highway was just a 2-streeter. Now it's 4-lane. Became more dependent, more wanting not to have to walk a long ways, especially with the weather we've got here.
So with the One Stop, it was you could get your fresh fruit, you could get your meats. There was a pharmacy type of thing.
A shoe store, a clothing store, a beauty shop, a hair cutting, for men. And
A barber.
Barber, yeah. Gee. And but it was like a family. They would get together like on a Friday night or Saturday night for the fights, after the stores closed, and they'd grab a beer, and 2 or 3 of the other merchants in the area. This is like a poker game or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
They knew that this was going to go on every Friday, whenever the sport event was on, and so they'd come through the side door, and they'd be enjoying a beer or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
and it was on those. In those days, you weren't watching it; it was all radio.
Wow.
Kind of dull, as we would see it today. No.
It sounds like they made a good time out of it.
Well, they did, yeah, and of course, radio is they made a lot more descriptive talk now than they do on TV. They basically point out a few things because you can see what's going on now.
You'd have to be a pretty animated talker on the radio to engage people and get them to listen.
You have to be able to tell them what they're not seeing.
That's right. Well, Grandpa, there is so much history here, and we've only scratched the surface, but that's the snippet I'm going to give you today. I have a lot of little snippets from my conversation with my grandpa that I would love to share with you. My grandpa tends to ride a little scooter around Camas. It's yellow, right, Grandpa?
Yellow.
It's not the original, but this is what, your second or third scooter?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. His other one was vintage. It was really cool. This one's cool too. But if you see my grandpa on a scooter around town, say hello. If you see him down at Starbucks, say hello.
And be careful.
And be careful. And if you see him anywhere, this is a great gentleman in the community that's been here a long time. And I think it's wonderful, Grandpa.
Thank you.
All right. I've enjoyed talking to you today.
That's
Thanks
fun.
for sharing. All right. This is Just a Girl in Camas, Alicia King. Thank you.